from that method. You look at Denver, $25 million on the tax rate up front to help pay for their program. 2/3 of the districts in Texas didn't accept the money because Texas couldn't guarantee any money beyond a certain year. Never mind the fact that it turned out not to work very well. In Florida, Orlando, for example, is short money for their teacher compensation program. Hillsborough County in Florida, and I can go on and on and on. But the last common denominator is money. I respectfully disagree with Mr. Nelson. I don't think you can have the discussion, one without the other, if you're going to have a merit pay discussion. If your goal is to improve teacher performance, you don't need the money as the incentive, would be my recommendation to the committee. It would be a more robust tool to evaluate teachers and give me the people that we need to do the evaluations on the ground. And I'll guarantee you our performance will also go up. And finally, keep in mind the tools that these states use. Rhode Island has one of the most rigorous student testing programs in the country, a NECAP. It measures right up there with DATE testing. So when you're measuring student performance, you also have to measure what the kids in Texas are being measured on, the kids in Minnesota are being measured on. There's a whole lot of things. It's not a simple, quick fix decision. As Mrs. Powers pointed out, a lot of people have poured tens, hundreds of gates. They're all pouring a lot of money in. And you just need to be careful that there are common denominator, common threads, regardless of size. And there is some data that shows success, but there's also a lot of data that is inconclusive. But that's for a later discussion. But I think as a committee, to frame what you hear, I think you need to keep it. Is the goal to improve teacher performance? If so, merit pay, I would argue, is a mechanism to use, but not necessarily the mechanism.
I think you brought great points, and that's basically, you did much better than what I was trying to do. You're trying to simply bring the discussion to these type of issues. Do we agree that it's not going to happen without teacher involvement? I cannot see how we can do this without teachers' involvement. And after all, when you look at this, who is going to define what's excellence in, I don't know, let's say in art? Certainly not school committee, and certainly not just a superintendent. Probably art teachers getting together, they have the most experience, they will define what's excellence in teaching of art. The same thing for math teachers. How do we measure? Well, we have to figure out how we do this. How do we actually measure things? I completely agree with the superintendent that the big piece of this is evaluation. And to some extent, we already had a plan to have a subcommittee which was created to deal with one of our main objectives in our goals in strategic plan, to talk about teacher evaluations, and to some extent this committee was kind of put on hold to see what kind of thoughts are we going to have on merit pay, because these two things kind of work hand in hand. Evaluation can work by itself, or what superintendent said, as a method of actually eliminating teachers who cannot deliver within the system, and work with the teachers potentially who can and wants to improve, and it can work by itself. And the consequence of merit is you stay in the system and you are paid like everyone else, and lack of merit or not giving sound merit is you leave the system. Well, the question is, if there's a national level where you are going to actually reward the people for moving from level of satisfactory in a particular category to very good, and then maybe even more from very good to excellent, if you are going to introduce these things on top of this, that's the purpose of this discussion. Because evaluation is going to happen, but they're also talking about the merit issue. Some merit discussion I hear is, well, if the whole school performs at a particular level, then everyone is going to get a raise. Otherwise, no one is going to get a raise in the whole school. Is this a valid concept to discuss? I don't think so, but you hear things like this. And because we hear these things, why don't we talk about this as a community, as a group, to see if some of these things can be simply fleshed out and we can focus on things which matter.
Mr. Chair, not to cut you off, but
thank you.
Mr. Burke.
Someone has to do it.
Mr. Burke has been waiting patiently.
Mr. Burke.
And I've been known to do that before. Thank you, Chairman. My name is Mike Burke. I live at 67 Durfee Road, Tiverton, and I appreciate the chance to speak with the committee tonight and about whether or not the committee should look at this time at expending your precious time, energy, and resources on deliberations regarding the merit pay system. And I will say that the copy of the proposal that Mr. Nelson spoke to that I had referenced Mr. Coulter as the author of it. So when I speak to it in my notes, I do reference that as his authorship. And I do have copies that I can leave with Elaine for you. As a former vice chairman of this committee and having served with the majority of you, we've had the opportunity to discuss compensation issues, including merit pay, on numerous occasions. Sometimes those were very heated. These discussions appropriately were held in the context of contract negotiations and our ability to continue to provide high quality, affordable public education for the school system and for the students and families of Tiverton, which includes fair, equitable, and competitive compensation and benefits to our employees. At times I've also locked horns with both proponents of merit pay, such as Mr. Coulter and the GCC, and those who at least are potential opponents of the merit pay, such as the NEA leadership. So I think I come with some baggage on both sides of that aisle, if you will. However, I'm here tonight as a taxpayer and as a parent who firmly believes that our community has a moral responsibility to provide the best public school system that is responsive to our community's fiscal realities. In that light, I urge you to waste as little of your time and energy and as little of our precious resources as possible on this agenda of locally driven merit pay. I'm not averse to the development of a statewide compensation and benefit system for teachers in Rhode Island that includes merit as a component, if that system truly can show significant gains in overall student performance. However, I don't believe a small district like Tiverton can and should tackle this on our own. Rhode Island's educational system and the compensations of teachers across districts are too tightly integrated for one small district to do this alone and expect effective outcomes. I do have a piece that you'll see in my written comments around the whole study issue that's been belabored, so I'm not going to get into detail on that. I just, with all due respect to my friend and former committee colleague, Chairman Burgundy, asked that you recognize that there is a body of evidence out there that you just can't simply disregard because it may have been done in larger districts. And also, and it's been discussed, that student achievement is not just about test scores, it's about the whole student. And it's about the student from the time they enter the district and even before, which is harder to measure, the time they leave the district. Which is why Rhode Island decided to have the testing part of the graduation requirements only count as a third. Many did not want it to count at all. So 2/3 are not based on high stakes testing. And our senior project is a fine example of one of those components that was put together by Mr. Forrest from the high school as a volunteer when he first originated. And finally, with what I've read in the studies, and I've looked at the Vanderbilt study, I've looked indirectly at some of the comments on the Denver study. What I look at it as, if we were to go forward with this, it would be an experiment with our children and our children's ability to succeed in life. And I, for one, don't give any permission for my daughter to be involved in that experiment. So I want to get to some other components, though, that have been tossed around and are important. One is, even without looking at the possible benefits of a merit pay system, my question is, aren't we putting the cart before the horse? Last spring, the district pulled together the same stakeholder groups identified in Mr. Coulter's proposal: students, parents, taxpayers without children in the schools, teachers, union leadership, RIDE representatives, and others, to develop a 3-year district strategic plan